No human alive will see equality during their lifetime, anywhere in the world. I'm a storyteller, and today I'm going to share with you some stories associated with a data set that has occupied my mind for quite some time. 267. According to the World Economic Forum, at the current rate of progress, it will take us 267 years to close the economic gender gap. This data set is a combination of various data sets from around the globe, 156 countries, and measures formal opportunities for women and men. But before I continue with this highly optimistic storytelling session, in regards to this data set, I would like to clarify that this data is a combination of data sets collected by experts, highly informative actors. So we know 99.9% that this data is accurate. Norway, the country that we're all currently in, is ranked number 3 in the world. Still, Norwegian women earn 84% that of men. Afghanistan, my birth country, is ranked at the very bottom as 156th place, where Afghan women up to January 2021 were earning 16% that of men. And today, nobody knows what the future holds for women of Afghanistan. Why can't we then just look at this data as just facts? I believe that throughout my life, my experiences have been that that's not sufficient. The majority of you will think about this data, but the majority of you will also go home and think about something else. Because let's be honest, there's a lot going on in our planet right now. For me, as an Afghan-Norwegian lawyer and a political scientist, I see this data and I think of it as the most powerful voice in the room. Because this data says so much, not just about structure, cultural biases, and barriers, but it also tells us stories, different stories. And I would like for all of you to try to find ways to relate and find meaning within this data. Because when I look at this data, I think about the story of a woman who I recently met here in Norway. I think about a surgeon who was forced to resign from her job due to cultural and structural biases. I think about the woman I met in Washington, D.C., who lost her job, like 64 million other women around the globe, and is faced with poverty. And I think about the woman that I met in India, dyeing garments till her fingers went sore, working long hours. Her garments, they make it to markets all over the globe, but she still has no access to the formal economy, no bank account under her name. Still, we see that 80% of all garment makers around the globe are women, yet 9 out of 10 billionaires associated with the garment industry, such as the fashion industry, are men. I also think about the woman and her 2 daughters I met on the border of Iran and Afghanistan, picking saffron from purple flowers on mid-sunny mornings, on lands they have no right over and they never will. And I think about my mother, who is here tonight, who was forced to resign from her job due to the first Taliban regime, due to the patriarchy, and had to start all over again in a new land. She didn't have to fight against systems, structures, cultures once, but twice. And many women and many girls and many mothers like her. But I would also like for you to find meaning in this data. We can try to look into the past, because 267 is a really large number. None of us will be alive in 267 years. But 267 years ago was only a decade away from the start of the American Revolution. A revolution that built the foundation for our first modern, liberal democracy. So for us to close the economic gender gap today would take living with another United States for the same timeline as we have lived with that foundation. We can also try to find meaning by looking into the future. 267 years from now, your great-great-great-great-granddaughter might have the same economic opportunities as her brothers. It's quite strange to think about data in that way. But we see that looking into the past and looking into the future is actually bringing this data set further away from us. The reason we need to find ways to relate to data is because we need to act. Data says something about the actions that needs to be implemented on the ground for something that needs to be done. But who are in charge? Who are making decisions when it comes to actions? In the world that we live in today, if we look at this from a traditional lens, the main decision makers, who are they? If we look at it from a leadership perspective, we can look at one system, the largest system of our time, the United Nations, 193 member states, yet 26 of those states have a female leadership. So if the decision-making power is in the hands of our traditional leaders, then the act and the decision-making is in the hands of the men. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Because we live in a different world, and we live in a different time. And today, the decision-making power is not only in the hands of the few. Because the interesting fact is that power is never given to women. Power is taken. And I believe we can all be actors, and we can all be decision makers. My day job today is at a Norwegian tech company, run mainly by 2 women. And what we believe is that with correct data and a diverse storytelling pot, we can all be decision makers, and we can make this number smaller together. Because the truth is, we might not have a planet in 267 years. More and more areas of our globe is underwater every single year, and scientists have found that each year, 267 gigatons of ice is being melted away. So we have to act sooner, because by acting sooner, we will have more diversity in leadership. We will have more diversity in our workforce, and we will have more formal capital to pick from to find solutions in some of the most global, challenging problems that we are faced with. What happens if we manage to close this gap? One thing we know for sure is that the United Nations themselves, they have calculated that by closing the economic gender gap, we can bring up the global incomes levels for everybody by 35%. That would not be so harmful given with all the challenges we're faced with in terms of our economies today. And I believe that the 1/3 of my life that I have spent working on closing the economic gender gap, I have learned from female storytellers, practitioners, and makers and builders around the globe that these women, they are going to continue this fight. But we need the support from our other friends, brothers, to actually reach this goal. And it doesn't mean that we have not come far, because we have. There has been progress in this field as well. We see that women's income level actually have increased by 5% the last 3 decades. This progress is minor, but it is progress nevertheless. We also know today that 41 of the 500 Fortune companies around the globe, women are leaders. 1/3 of university deans are women. And we also have female role models. We've had women as Supreme Court judges, and we've had women holding Europe together for 16 years. So the progress is happening, but it is too slow. And for my life, it is worthwhile to fight for this cause so we can see a change in our own lifetimes, so that we can relate and we don't have to wait for 267 years. And I hope you will all join my mission. Thank you so much.